Thank you for watching the #1 podcast in the whole YouTube wrestling community. I'm one of your hosts, Juan.
And I'm your other host, Jean-Paul Leck.
And together we are
Rope Break.
Happy Easter to every single one of you. I hope that all of you are at least enjoying a little bit of family time. I know you guys have plenty of time with your families, but I hope that you guys are having a decent, I would say a nice meal with your families, trying to forget about this whole situation. And that's why we are here. We're here to bring you entertainment. We're going to bring you great information. We're here to bring you the best of what these two guys can do, and that is talk about professional wrestling. This time we have something that just came out like an hour or something ago, and for some people it's not even out. Is Broken Skull Sessions, the latest episode with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and like he said, he was interviewing the greatest of all time, and that is Nature Boy Ric Flair. Jump.
Exactly. A legit, probably. I mean, maybe it's because it's fresh in my mind, but probably my favorite episode. I would say I like it more than the Bret Hart one. I mean, the Undertaker one is still really good. Maybe that because that's the first one, but I think this one with Ric Flair. Maybe it's because it was almost 2 hours, but like this was just really good, and you got to see, here's some things from the Nature Boy that I mean, there's been documentaries and specials and everything done on him before, but it's always interesting when you can hear from him again because you always hear something new, and also it's good to see him that his health and his spirits are up.
Oh yeah,
from all of his recent medical troubles.
Like see him in good spirits, great health, and also one thing I will say, his memory is still great.
Yeah, especially because when he said a couple years ago, he said I couldn't remember anything from the past. I could remember stuff that was happening in the now, and that that would continue happening. He's like, but I couldn't remember stuff from the past. But he said he got his memory, all that stuff kind of came back when the brain, So that's what I mean. It's real scary, but he's doing legit now, so that's badass.
So he's doing great, and that's why we feel great about it. So before we start, thank you so very much for everybody that is watching our videos. Thank you to everybody that is subscribing. Thank you for the love and support. And like I said, from the bottom of my heart and from Jean-Paul, happy Easter to every single one of you. Also, guys, don't forget we have tons of great content. We have Monday Night Raw with Mr. Leeg and myself talking about the Raw after Mania. Like the Big Show was there challenging the brand new WWE champion Drew McIntyre. Like he's actually talking about promoting his Netflix show. A lot of people that I've heard that they watch it they say it's pretty legit, it's pretty funny. So whoever wants to check it out, there you go. Big Show for you guys. Nia Jax came back, Jean-Paul. A great match with Aleister Black and Apollo Crews, brand new member of the Raw roster. And also Bianca Belair joins Raw to be alongside her husband, Montez Ford, and Angelo Dawkins with the Street Profits. So check that video out. Jean-Paul, we have AEW also, and AEW Dynamite. So,
I mean, you just say AEW, it was kind of a little bit of a letdown, I guess, this week. I mean, NXT had an amazing blockbuster show, so that definitely hurt AEW, but, we got to see the match with Cody and Shawn Spears for the tournament. That was the main thing. And like we said, we all knew Cody was going to win. They made Shawn Spears look good until the very end when he kicked out of 2 crossroads, but then got his shoulders pinned in a figure 4. So
perfect 10 for like the 10 seconds that he looked like a monster. We both are thinking, hey, he's going to win. And then he loses in the worst fashion possible.
And also, how could I forget about the timeless classic of the battle over the name Best Friends?
That's true. A lot of people hating it, Jean-Paul. They hate the fact that Kenny Omega, a lot of people are saying that Kenny Omega is going down. Is not being portrayed great like he should be because they feel that Nagasawa is hurting him. They feel that like he's diminishing his own character.
Yeah, he's definitely not the best bout machine anymore. Does he still have it in him? Oh, absolutely. But just the way that he's being portrayed and the storylines and this and that, yeah, he definitely looks like a lower end of the main event or like the top end of the mid card. That's kind of where he's like.
So we also had the NXT, like you said, Jean-Paul, great show. First week that NXT actually beat AEW, and
we could say that this was Takeover Tampa. We could say this was like Takeover Tampa Part 2. We had that legit women's ladder match to be the number one contender to face Charlotte for the women's championship, and then obviously the blow off match between Gargano and Ciampa, and then we saw the tag team. What is that?
The
Indu or
in
Indu?
indie shaker, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we saw them, so we got to see like the last beat, like you said, Gargano and Champa. We got a lot of the storyline developing, and finally, like the last match between them. So that concludes the storyline. So maybe Killer Cross might be in the next episode, or we see that like something different is gonna happen. So great for NXT, and also we had SmackDown. Braun Strowman kind of like and the Fiend are gonna cross paths. I see like that Wyatt's family storyline is bringing back, and we got to see the like Strowman kind of like coming out and celebrating his brand new Universal Championship win. He's the champ, so he got a match with Nakamura. So everything over there is in our channel. Jean Paul, we had a great interview, and one more time, we want to say thank you to Vince Steele, the Jurassic Juggernaut. We had a great conversation with him and his experiences in professional wrestling. He talked about Sabu, he talked about the Sandman, Homicide, Loki, all like the stuff that he's done, and also like he took a little bit of a shot on Cha Cha Charlie. So that feud in the CCW, it might be still happening. The last beat, they're gonna have like last blowout
yep,
match.
yep.
So
That's what he. Definitely a legit. The guy has been in the business for 19, almost 20 years. Check out this interview because, like you said, this guy he knows his stuff, legit stuff. And like you said, he was going over things now. How he said he wasn't always a Jurassic Juggernaut, but like we said, wrestling is marketed more towards kids. Kids like dinosaurs. So he's a smart guy. He knows you got to market to the times. He knows how to make money. He knows how to draw. So a legit interview, a legit guy.
thank you. Yeah, so please check it out. And now, Jean Paul, tell me about Ric Flair. After you are done listening to this interview, almost 2 hours we saw this.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Ric Flair? Like, do you feel more inclined to like, now we'll say, I know you respect the guy, but I'm saying like, do you feel more like a fan of his? Because
Yeah.
you and me are kind of like
Yeah.
old school. And yeah,
Yeah.
we love people like that.
I mean, definitely, I could have watched this thing. Could have been twice as long, and I still would have watched and enjoyed every second of it. Ric Flair, like you said, I always thought he was legit. The only thing that I was a little like really was when he, was kind of like going after Becky Lynch for the whole man thing. Like, oh, you can't call yourself the man, and he was threatening to sue her or threatening to sue WWE, and it was like really like that. To me, that didn't look good. And whether that was true or a false report or not. I saw enough people report it, so I believed it was true, but, who actually knows? But other than that, I thought, Ric Flair's legit. I put him on the wrestling, Mount Rushmore, and, he's the top four. He actually kind of gave his own Mount Rushmore of guys for drawing power and making wrestling, as popular as it is. So, I mean, like I said in the beginning, every time, because I've seen hundreds of, Ric Flair interviews or documentaries, this and that. But every time he does a new one, we get to see, or hear something different. And he kind of went through his whole career and this and that. But I feel like this is one of the first times he really delved into his like personal slope and his like depression and his self-doubt, which was kind of, I don't want to say it was it was one of the main parts of this interview because I kind of kept going back to it. And it was, to me, it was a big part because you think, how can Ric Flair, the limousine riding, styling, profiling, like, how can he be the one who has any kind of self-doubt or self-confidence? And, but I mean, it happens to everybody. It can even happen to the Nature Boy.
Yeah, and if it happens to him, it can happen to all of us. So now, like the one thing, my biggest outtake from this is like you see the respect, admiration that Stone Cold Steve Austin had. Like I don't think that like he's never been that like happy, that excited in neither one of those interviews because probably for them, The Undertaker, The Big Show, Kane, Goldberg, they were all colleagues. So you see them in the same light.
And yeah, Bret
But
Hart,
Flair is
yeah,
like the
it's
idol.
almost like, yeah, exactly. I
For
definitely can pick
example, yeah,
that up, yeah.
for me, example, I will feel exactly like that if I will see. I know that like he's in heaven, God rest his soul. Randy Savage. For me, it
Mhm.
would have been like that because that was the guy that I look up to, and I'm like, okay, I like this. So I will be so passionate about asking him everything. How do you use what did you eat? What do you do? Everything because I look up to him so much. But that was for me like to see Stone Cold like in a different light. he was so excited just to talk to him, and he kept saying the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time, because in his own head, Stone Cold believes that. So Jean Paul,
Oh
let's
yeah.
go from the beginning. Ric Flair has an accident, an airplane accident. He survives the accident. He breaks his back in three different spots. A few people died on that, but like that actually helps him. That actually tones down his style because he goes from being like a really heavy guy, like almost 300 pounds, but then he has to go to 240, like around that, and then 235, 240, he says, and then he starts like his run in the NWA. He gets his character from kind of like impersonating Buddy Rogers a little bit. He gets the glasses from like the superstar Billy Graham, and then he goes back to being the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and see that the one thing Stone Cold is, how do you feel when you first won the title? And that's like, hey, I was lost. So that's kind of like it's great to see how the wrestlers, because see, we as being Steele, how is that feel when you become the champion for the first time, and now Ric Flair, we got to see like two
Yeah.
different answers from that. So you elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was cool. All the things he said in the beginning, and he's like, I wasn't ready. They gave you the title, and I feel like, especially with that, and any world champion or heavyweight champion, when you become champ, it's like, unless you're a guy who's really in the business for a lot of years, cutting your teeth, and as they say, and then you get the belt, then maybe you're ready. But I feel like nobody's really ready the first time they win a title because it's one of those things you need to learn it by experiencing it. So you have the title, and like Stone Cold said, he won the title. I think it was the United States title from Bobby
Yeah,
Eaton, and he was like,
yeah,
"Okay, now what do I do with this? Like now what?" Because the whole point was, "Oh, I'm the red hot, young baby face, and I won the title, or like heel, whatever, won the title. Now, but it's like now you got to defend it, and that's the hardest thing. That's the mark of a true champion. That's why we say like, oh, Seth Rollins, when he was the Universal Champ, his run was bullshit because all his title defenses were awful,
it
and that's
doesn't
what
mean
defines.
anything.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's what
Exactly.
defines a champion. Like Ric Flair, like he said, it wasn't until the second time around that he was like, no, I'm legit. I know what to do. I can go into this arena, and I know how we draw money, and I know how to do this. If I like, he was talking even in tag matches against Dusty and stuff like that. He's like, if we have to let the baby faces beat up on us for a half an hour, and then in the last 5 minutes we cheat, and do something to win and get out of there, and the crowd hates us, they're going to pay big money to see this match again next month to hope we get our asses kicked.
Exactly. So see, like that's the when you hear people like Ric Flair, it's just like you learn the psychology of wrestling.
Yeah, and
Ric Flair is
especially
probably
and
the
yeah.
Bible of wrestling.
Oh,
The
and
Bible.
and that was back then, in the 70s and 80s, which he said multiple times through his interview was his favorite period of wrestling, because back then in the 70s and 80s and stuff, and even the early 90s, you could pull off matches like that, and those people in the crowds, that's when they were waiting for you outside in the parking lot with a loaded gun. If you were a heel, and they said this is the last time you're gonna beat up Dusty Rhodes, and they'd shoot at you because they thought it was real. They thought these guys were going in the ring and beating up each other and screwing each other's wives, or burning each other's houses down, whatever they were doing. They thought that was all real.
And they had to be escorted down out of
Yeah, so
those
that's
towns.
that's that's why I think, like you said, you drew big money. I mean, now, when we see stuff, it's like, oh yeah, there's that Nakamura, Cesaro, Sami Zayn versus Braun Strowman. I better go to Elimination Chamber so I can see that. Like, no, nobody's like invested because we all know it's a work. But back then, I mean, you thought it was real. So that's
Yeah,
why it was like big money. And Ric Flair, he was like I don't want to call him an actor, but he was the perfect, he could play that character because, I mean, he said it wasn't even a character. It was him. He
but
was living,
and see,
he
that
was
tells
living
you,
that
Jean Paul.
life and doing all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and that tells you that, like you said, like is the best, and the best acting, so to say, or the best character, the best gimmick that you can come up with is the closest one to you, who you really are. For
Oh,
example, we see
exactly.
Stone Cold being the brawler, being like Stone Cold Steve
Yep.
Austin, is because he is what Stone Cold Steve Austin is. The American Badass is what Mark Calloway, the Undertaker, is. So like that's why
Yeah.
Ric Flair pretty much he was living the Ric Flair style. He was being
Yeah.
the Nature Boy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really cool to hear about that. And then we had he said like how he loves like the feuds with Dusty Rhodes, with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Those matches I've seen a lot of them. It's kind of old school. Of course, the pace is different. You're not you don't see spot fest. You don't see like super kicks. You don't see like high risk moves. But it's more like you said, telling the story. And I know you're
Oh
big
yeah.
time on telling
Oh
stories, so
yeah.
you see that like, and yeah, tell me about like how he
I
says about like his moveset being like limited and all of that.
I mean, I definitely love like all this when he's talking the old school stuff, and I know early around this point too, he was also saying how the word "great" gets thrown around a lot. He's like, guy like he's humble, but he even considers himself to be great because he was a draw for he could make money. He was good on the mic, and he was good in the ring, and he could work. So they were like, oh, okay, Ric Flair's one of the great ones. You have guys today who people are like, oh, they're great. Guys like AJ Styles are great. Kevin Owens is great. Is Ricochet great? Ricochet is a hell of a wrestler. You put a microphone in front of him, and it's like the crickets start chirping, and you're like, oh, okay. So maybe Ricochet isn't great. So that's like what I kind of was getting from Ric Flair, and I like how he's like, I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to name guys who I think are like that. He's like, I'm going to keep it legit because it's not personal. But he said, God, it's like it's different now. And I
Yeah.
think, they try to like it's hard because they're not going to say like, oh, well, maybe it's just WWE that is writing them and making them seem generic and this and that. Because back in his day, Ric Flair wasn't owned by anybody. Ric Flair went to NWA and wrestled. He went to Puerto Rico and wrestled. He went to Japan and wrestled. But he didn't go on a company's flight. He flew himself and he got paid the money. The money went to him. It didn't go to Vince McMahon, who then paid Ric Flair. I mean, it did in '92 when he signed with them. But I mean, you know what I mean. But I mean, like he was making the money for himself. It's all like independent and this and that. Yeah, if you're the world champ for somebody, but if you're not and you're just getting booked, like you got to make your own money. You got to be successful.
Oh
And that's
yeah.
like, and that's what he was, and that's what a lot of these guys they failed to do.
And see, like, well, also I feel, John Paul, that like we judge wrestling on a different, also like with a different set of eyes. What we
Mm-hmm.
focus on, because for example, reflexors, like, and it ties exactly alike. Can you, this is not coincidence. This is not a work. This is only a shoot. What is being still said yesterday is like, if the promoter puts the title on you, is because he knows or he thinks that you have the ability to draw. What does Ric
Yep.
Flair said that? It's like
Yep.
you're great when you have the ability to what to draw. When
Mm-hmm.
people come, they pay their hard money to come and see you. They want to, like, for example, for me, for you, hey, we want to see The Undertaker. Why? Because we love The Undertaker. We know he's legit. Hey, we want to see Brock Lesnar. We want to see, hey, we're going to be at a WrestleMania because for the name value itself is something that, like, we know is going to be, we tend to believe most of the time that it's going to be good. But see, that's
Mm-hmm.
like, and you can see, like, see how, like, two people that, like, have been champions or they held a belt, they agree in the same thing. So cool stuff on that. And what do you think about this whole thing that he said about the Royal Rumble '92?
Yeah,
Most
I
people,
mean, well, like you said, I mean, back in the day, they used to wrestle like at house shows and all this stuff before it was all on, television and this and that. They used to wrestle matches at half an hour long matches. And that's just like the main. They said sometimes it would be like, oh, they had a couple matches on the card, but if it was like Ric Flair and somebody else, they might wrestle for an hour and a half. And then that's the whole show. The other guys don't even get to go on, or the show goes for 3, 4 hours. These guys would have long, grueling matches one on one. So like he said, for him to be in that ring in that match for over an hour, it was nothing because there was how many times where he would be, like laid out and he would just be laying there, knocked out, whatever. So to
I
him, it
love
was
John Paul
easy.
how he explained how he came out with the thing that like he falls, like
Yeah.
how he's like, oh yeah, I just did it. Like Arn Anderson hated it, but everybody loved it, and I still do. I love it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's funny. It adds. It's one of those things because like he is 99% of the time he's a heel, and for you see a heel to get hit and to stumble forward like that and fall on his face, like it's funny. That's like when comedy and wrestling is appropriate. It's funny because it's not a constant thing. He does it and you laugh and then you go back to being serious. But
and and it enhances. It makes it legit. It's like you need, like, even
yeah,
like they say, you need a break. And see, the one thing that like everybody else from old school, they said, I don't know, and you can agree with me, is they say less is more. So
mm-hmm.
they don't. I think that like neither of these guys, the old school guys, agree with like the high spots, the like the pace that is going
Oh,
to be, like, for
well, what
example, like a
did look?
Lucha
Hey, like
Bros against
yeah.
against Kenny Omega
Well,
and Amanda Page.
what did Vince Steele say yesterday? And like we agree with it too. Jim Cornette says that a lot of these old guys say it, and I respect what they say because I agree with what they say. It's like if you do the big spots all the time, no, the big spots aren't going to be important. That's why they say less is more. Like you do less in the ring, you pace yourself. You're going to keep yourself fresh, and you're also going to keep these people coming back. If you do the top rope Spanish fly on two guys and 100 super kicks, next time you do it, people are going to be like, "So I've seen this already," and no one's going to care. That's why I say Keith Lee. He gave us so much and so little. Now we're like, oh, Keith Lee's still legit, but like he's not going to get any more legit because there's literally nothing else he can do.
It reminds me of like New Jack a little bit, that you will say, like,
Yeah.
remember what Cornette was saying. The first time is 10 feet, 15
Yep.
feet, 20. It's like you got to keep how you're putting the stakes higher and higher so you
Exactly.
keep yourself relevant. And that is really hard. But like, this Rumble, example, many people like say that this is the best Rumble of all time.
Oh,
And I
I
would
would
say
say
name value, yeah.
yeah,
Name value, yeah.
it's definitely up there for that. Like you said, name value. Now there's a lot better rumbles. I like the one. I forget which year, if it was 03, 02, or no, I think it was 04 where Ben Wall won.
That's all
And,
for.
and
All
yeah,
for.
that was a legit rumble. Even the one when Nakamura won, I didn't think was a bad rumble. If I'm going with like a modern one. But like they gotta have like the decent in-ring action, and a lot of times they don't. You kind of just see like two guys kind of beat up on one. It really the Rumble matches really don't get good until it's the final couple guys. But like you said, 92 is always up there in consideration conversations for the best Rumble of all time. But I think it's just because of that amazing promo Ric Flair cut afterwards, and just all the stars in there. Boss Man, Shawn Michaels, Davey Boy, Piper, Hogan, Sid, Macho
Savage,
Man. Savage. I know
DiBiase,
there's yeah,
DiBiase,
yep,
all of them, yeah, all of them.
yeah,
And I think like the Warrior, I think he was also in it. So like you see like and even Ric Flair says like 20 guys out of the 30 men are in the Hall of Fame.
yeah.
How can you have another Rumble like that? Bret Hart's in it. See, everybody, like all those cool guys that, like, years after they turn out to be like gigantic stars, they were in that Rumble. And for them, for Vince McMahon to choose him over everybody else in that roster to be the new, because that's one of the two Rumbles where the title has been on the line. The next one turned out to be 2016. Then for him to be able to
Like,
win the World Heavyweight Championship
yep.
there, it was awesome.
And like he said, it was when he won it, he cut that legit famous promo, with a tear in my eye, being like, this is the real world's champion, this and that. That was all, like you said, it was a shot at NWA. He didn't really go into it. There's stuff going on, this and that. I'm not that much of a historian that I don't know exactly what, the disagreement and this and that was, but, he left there and he's like, this belt is done. And, it was all just to shoot on them.
Yeah, and that also tied it up because Stone Cold was able to say what happened at Mania 8. Mania 8 was supposed to be all the dots, everything was pointing out, all the arrows, everything was pointing out at like Hulk Hogan against Ric Flair. That was supposed to be the biggest match in wrestling history of all time. Something along those lines. I don't think he wanted to elaborate, but like there's
Oh,
many
definitely. Yeah, they
reports,
definitely
there's many
kind of
things
they definitely
that
brushed that under the rug real quick.
yeah, because they didn't want many reports claim that he didn't want to lose, Hogan didn't want to lose, so kind of Vince had to like cut it out, and he's like, okay, you want to work with Randy, so he ended up working with Savage for the title, and then Hulk Hogan
But
went with
I
Savage
mean, I
instead.
agree with what he said though, because it was like, okay, like if I'm gonna shoot on the subject, it's like if Hogan didn't want to lose, whatever, that's Hogan, we know that. But dude, if you're going to go film a movie, like whatever movie he was filming, I forget what they said it was,
Thunder in
Thunder,
Paradise. That was
yeah,
the
yeah,
TV
yeah,
show
yeah,
that he was doing at that time because he
yeah,
was
and
about to
like,
go from
yeah,
WWF.
they said if he was going to go do that, why would he be the champion? Why would Flair drop the belt, give it to him? You know what I mean? So why would that even happen? And
Yeah,
then it was like, you're not going to do that. You're going to keep it on the guy who's going to be here full time. And then if Hogan's like, no, I don't want to do that, this and that. So it's like, you had the egos, you had common sense, and Hogan's ego mixed with common sense never ends right. So I feel like they did the best thing now. And like we both love Randy, so it was legit.
oh yeah, like I really love Randy Savage, and yeah, to me that's one of my best like WrestleMania spots of all
Yep,
time. It's
yeah,
Randy winning.
Liz, and
I
everything.
might
Yep.
be a little biased on that, but you're absolutely right, Jean Paul. Like the storyline with like Liz and like the whole thing because like there's so many promos of Ric Flair on the road to that WrestleMania, but we never see a promo from the Macho Man. There
Mm-hmm.
was always that room that you will see like the door, say Macho Man. It's like we will not hear from Randy until the match. So that was like for me that was great. Like you should. I know you've seen a lot of them. WCW has a lot of matches between Randy Savage and Ric Flair. Absolutely great stuff. Like those two, I don't think like even he said I don't think that they were that much of a big friends or anything, but at least they knew how to work. And
Oh
see
yeah,
that's the one that I will say Ric Flair. He was able to work with absolutely anybody. He mentioned
and
also Carlos Colon, Puerto
yep.
Rico.
And that you brought that up, I mean, they did talk about all those old guys, like you said, the Bruiser Brodies, Terry Funks, this and that, Carlos, and but he didn't say though. He didn't really talk much about WCW. I mean, of
No,
course, he mentioned Sting. They talked about Starrcade '93, the match against Vader and Harley Race. When Harley Race was like, really, he was calling him out. He's like, you suck. Like, what are you doing out there? Like, really, like this
you're
is
a
all you got?
shaming. You're a
Yeah,
shaming.
yeah. He's like, you're shaming me out there. And then he laid into Vader. And you hear a lot of people get like rough in the like Vader, he tries to maybe overstep his boundaries. And then maybe it's him just playing his gimmick, his monster, but he, starts laying in some stiff shots and people lay in stiff shots back. And usually it's Leon White who's like, the one who's backing up. You always think he's gonna lay everybody out, but again, I'm not gonna go into. But I've seen videos where people are laying into him in the ring, and he's the underdog in the fight. But like you said, other than that, like mentioning Vader and Sting and Harley Race, he didn't really talk about NWO or any of that because I think that was really the start of his like, do I still have it? Like, am I still
The
Ric Flair?
downfall, you will say,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, it's also like because he had a lot of issues over there because of Eric Bischoff. He does
yeah,
mention because we will touch this on a little bit later, but he does mention that one of the biggest reasons he hated like his Impact, like his TNA run, he's like, oh well, Bischoff was running it, so you could see that there's still animosity, there's unfinished business over there. But like you said, we go now to the Ric Flair that goes back to WWE and the Undertaker like request to work with him
yeah, yeah.
For
Because like you
WrestleMania
said,
18 on
yeah,
2002.
yeah,
Said
like
Connor, yeah, go ahead.
Flair said he went in and he was like, oh, okay, like it's legit. I'm going to be the GM, whatever, this and that. It was a Monday Night Raw and somebody didn't show. And they're like, well, what the hell do we do? And they're like, Rick, dude, it's you. Like, you're wrestling. And he's like, what? Like, they're like, you got your stuff. He's like, yeah, I got my shit. And they're like, well, you're wrestling Brock. And he's like, what the hell? Like, what? And then as Rick was like, yeah. And I forget who it was who didn't show up. And that was the infamous when they wanted
Stone
Stone
Cold Bell.
Cold to
Yeah.
lose to Lesnar. And I agree with Stone Cold. I mean, I agree with everything he says. He shouldn't have handled it that way, but he definitely did the right thing in not doing the job because Stone Cold was, even at that time, was hotter than hell. Why would he lose to Brock Lesnar?
And that's what I mean.
That's literally would be like the Fiend losing to Goldberg. It's like what? Like, I mean, maybe not the same effect because Goldberg was the old time legend, but it was like, why would you have somebody lose? And it's like it's pointless. It doesn't make sense. Like, it's just like okay, like what does it do? You're just gonna have people hate Brock Lesnar, then like him because nobody wants to see Stone Cold lose, especially not when he's that active of a wrestler. So it's like, I agree with what he did, but back to Ric Flair, like you said, he does that, so he's kind of like getting his feet wet again in the ring, and it's like, but he's still, like he said, he's minimum 20 years older than these guys, even more so than other guys, and it's like, do I really belong? Do I fit in here? He's used to
Even
lock.
you will say personality wise, like
Yeah,
taste and everything,
yeah.
like all of that is different.
He's used to locker rooms from the 70s and 80s. Things were different now. Guys, you got to think at that time, guys are into like, I mean, now he's into it, but guys are into rap music and like new age metal and this kind of stuff. And he's probably like, what the hell? What can you really bond with these guys over? I mean,
Yeah.
drinking, partying, like he said, his party years, he didn't calm that down until, 6 years ago. But
Yes. No, yeah, absolutely. So like he gets the match with the Undertaker. That match is one of my favorite matches from the Undertaker and Ric Flair in WrestleMania history. And for me, for those two guys of all all the time, all the wrestling that I've seen from both of them, I really enjoy both of them. It's just a match that like both of them work at is spaceful. Is it's not like a really fast, but it has like it picks up during the end. And
oh
with
yeah,
Arn
yeah,
Anderson coming back, doing the spine buster, but there was before that, the Undertaker, he threw him. And go ahead, take me through that
Yeah,
spot.
where he threw him and he wanted to do the famous, like, the turnbuckle where he hits it, flips over, lands on the apron, then usually eats a big boot or some kind of move, flies off, onto the floor. But when he threw him, he, like, screwed it up. He didn't really hit it right and this and that. And you got to think, he even said walking down the ramp for this match, not even, like, going through it, weeks ahead of time, literally when the match is about to start. He even thought then, he's like, do I have it? Am I bullshit? Can I go? What's going to happen? And then he said, it was all this stuff. It was like going through his head, and he takes that bump, and that probably really took him out of it. So him and Undertaker lock up, and they kind of go toward the corner again. And he's like, you think you can hit it this time, kid? And he's like, that kind of got him a little bit. He was like, okay, it's legit. And he threw him, and he hit it, perfectly. And then he's like, at that point, I was starting to calm down. But he said it wasn't like that fixed him for his entire run. He said it was every single day, up and down. Some days he would be legit, and as soon as he got in the ring, it would be like, okay, this is good. But other times it would take him halfway through, maybe even towards the end of the match before he was like, okay, now I'm feeling better. Sometimes he wouldn't even feel it at all. So it was like a constant battle for him.
It was, but like, see, like he had extremely legit matches yet. For me, I enjoyed. For example, I know I wasn't born during the '70s.
Yeah.
I'm an '80s person, but I enjoyed this whole run because it was pretty.
But
At some
see,
points, it picked
but
up.
but see, that's the thing. If you and I are commenting on it or anybody else, nobody's gonna say, "Oh, Ric Flair's second run in WWE, it was bullshit." Yeah, you might not. You might say it's not as good as his stuff in the '70s and '80s. Well, yeah, no shit. Look how much older he is. But if you're judging him off his age and what he could still do, there's not a lot of people in the wrestling history that could do the stuff he was doing at his age. Terry Funk would probably be the only other person I would say that could wrestle to that
You
caliber
know
at that
who
age.
will mention also like though somebody that we know from the NWA, and we've talked about him in pay-per-view, the Rock and Roll Express. That will
Oh
be the
yeah,
only
yeah,
guys. The
yeah,
only guys
them as
that,
well.
yeah, Ricky
Yeah,
Morton. They mentioned
and
also like
Robert
they had a
Gibson.
big
Yep.
rivalry. Like he even mentions him like one of the guys that could draw money. That was like
Hmm.
his best feuds. He mentioned
Yeah.
Ricky Morton because of how
Oh,
over he
oh,
was.
oh, yeah. Well, especially like they said with the young ladies back then and stuff. I mean, those guys they drew anywhere they went at a tag team, singles, whatever. But like with Ric Flair, I mean, it was like like you said, it was crazy all this stuff with his depression, this and that. But it was like, and that's what I think it was. It was probably like a little bit depression mixed in with the self doubt and all that stuff. And you really don't know, but like you said, you and I judging it, we think he's legit, but that you're your own worst enemy. And
Oh
that's
yeah,
not just
and yeah,
anybody in the wrestling business. That's just anybody in real life.
his
You
mental
know,
health.
yeah,
That's pretty much what it is.
when
Yes.
you get because like somebody could pat like he said, somebody could pat him on the back and be like, "Oh, come on, Rick, you're still legit, this and that." But until you believe it yourself, it's not going to matter. Like he said,
Yeah.
it was now he did have legit moments, like he said, when him and Vince would go to wrestle, or him and Shane had a moment in Japan, and both of them said to him like, "Yo, this is an honor. This is so legit that I can be in the ring with you and actually wrestle and do all this." And he's like, that kind of stuff really touched him as well. So it's like legit to hear that because I never knew that or like knew Vince or Shane or anything said that to him. So that's the kind of stuff that's like really legit about all this. You hear
Oh
that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah. And then like I said, this match with the Undertaker. See, the Undertaker helped him out because see, the Undertaker, like everybody knows that that's the general in the WWE locker room for years. You go to the Undertaker for everything. He
Mm-hmm.
just won everybody's respect. So now let's talk about Jean Paul. One of the things for me that I really love from Ric Flair, evolution. Evolution for me is one of the staples that I enjoy the most. Like those guys, like the whole thing, the whole concept of it, evolution. You get the old guy, the veteran, and Ric Flair. You get like the guy that is already established and is peak, the guy Triple H, and then you get these two guys, Batista, Randy Orton, like the guys that you were molding and they were working
Mm-hmm.
for the future, and turned out to be a magnificent idea. You know that I hate the fact that like when they were beating up somebody, no one else came out to like make the save. But other than that, I absolutely love it from the moment that like Line in the Sand by Motorhead hit. I was completely sold on that faction. So your thoughts on that? He said he loved it. He said like
Oh,
that
oh,
brought me
I
back.
mean, yeah, I mean, how can you not like evolution? That we miss staples like that in WWE nowadays. And that's kind of what Sami Zayn and them kind of should have been. Not saying copy Evolution, but at least have that kind of effect. Instead of this, like, to me, they're kind of like jokes, but they're all legit wrestlers, but the three of them together are like a joke. But, I mean, Evolution was so legit. Like you said, Triple H was like, nah, Rick, we're just going to kind of manage these two guys. I'm still going to wrestle, but, like, it'll be legit. Don't worry. And then as soon as they get it going, it's like, okay, Rick, yeah, you're going to be wrestling, tag champ, this and that. But, I mean, Evolution was so legit. And like Flair said, look how many people they got over. Look how many people they feuded with. Goldberg, this and that, like all these guys, because who wouldn't want to see them get beat up? You got all these cocky guys, and, you put them all together in a group, especially Triple H at that time. Randy Orton, I thought, was always a good heel at any point in his career. Young, even to now, he's a good heel. And, Batista, look at him. He doesn't even have to say anything. He just goes out there and beats your ass, power bombs you. So they were definitely one of the best stables of all time. I would put them up. I would say, like, a lot of people like DX because of the crotch chops and, like, oh, chicks flashing their tits in the crowd. But I think Evolution is better.
I will say that, like, yeah, it was more to me, like, what the effect of what
Yeah.
you did afterwards. Because, for example, see, if you think about the Generation X, if you think about them, Billy, Road Dogg, X-Pac, China, see, when they were on their own, though, they kind of floundered. They're all
Mm-hmm.
flower, they didn't do anything big. I would say, out of all of them, imagine China will be the one that, like, won gold. She became like a
Yeah.
two-time Intercontinental Champion and all of that. But in Evolution, all of them went up. See,
Oh,
Randy
yeah.
Orton became the youngest world heavyweight champion. Batista, that feud with Triple H, that's probably one of the greatest
Mm-hmm.
feuds. One of the greatest raw moments. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Flair is like selling it like the hell of it.
Yeah.
And then done. And you see the face. And
Yep.
then you see Triple H going, "You son of a," and then like,
Yep.
"Oh no!" It's like, and even the King Lawler goes, "He's like, oh, well, if you do this, there's not turning back." So you how to tell the story. How you manage these guys. It came out great, and now it takes me to Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair, the retirement match, because Shawn Michaels says something to Ric Flair, and see, I'm gonna put it all together, Jean Paul, because see, that's all even like the commentary team, Jim Ross, the King,
Mm-hmm.
and Shawn Michaels telling him is like, how are we going to do this? Because of course we know that like you always talk to the person you're going to be having the match with. How are we going to do this? And what does Shawn Michaels says?
Sean tells him, he's like, dude, he's like, don't worry about it. Don't talk to me, whatever. He's like, don't talk. He's like, when we come down to the ring, I'm calling everything. He's like, this match, is for me. He's like, and I'm going to make it for you, like, so just whatever. Just don't try to call nothing, this and that. But one thing I just want to backtrack a little bit, then we'll get right to this. With Evolution, I like when he was talking, he said, Batista was just like, teach me. And I've always heard that about Batista. He was never like trying to argue and this and that. He was like, I want to learn. I want to be legit. But Randy was like taking bumps and this and that. He's like, I don't know if I should be taking all these bumps. I don't know if I should be selling for these guys, this and that.
Dean
And
Malenko.
his dad was telling him like, yeah, son, it might be bullshit. You're legit. You're my kid. Because Cowboy Bob Orton, no offense, but who remembers Cowboy Bob Orton?
Not
Anyway,
not a lot of people do.
so
Yes.
So, like, and then Flair told him, he's like, listen, kid, he's like, everybody sells for everybody. I don't give a shit if that guy's half your size, dude. This is today's wrestling. So that's the one thing you got to give Ric Flair. Obviously, he's from the 70s and 80s, but his mind and his mentality evolved through the years. And his
That's right.
gimmick, but it also helped that his gimmick of styling, profiling, being the rich, limousine riding old guy who got all the
Space
chicks,
Mountain.
even though he was 100 years old, he still got all the chicks. That gimmick is timeless. That gimmick could still be going around in 100 years from now. So his gimmick is timeless. That definitely helped, but also his ability to accept and adapt and not just be, stuck in the 70s and 80s. But this
Yeah.
match with Shawn, but back to the match with Shawn, it was like, it was a legit match and it was perfect in the sense that like Shawn knew what was best for Flair. And like he said, all the old spots that Flair used to do because he was never like a top rope guy, this and that. He wasn't like going to do a moonsault. Or he even said like, somebody said something to him about doing a moonsault. I forget
And
if it
he
was,
scared me. It was
yeah,
Reed. Reed came to him and like, can you do a moonsault?
yeah. And he was like, oh, like what? Like, and then, he was like, well, this and that because Charlotte did gymnastics. He's like, well, maybe I'll see if the coach can do something. But he's like, I need to have a harness on me. He's like, I never went through it and did all this. But so like he wasn't a top rope guy. But every time he would go up, his opponents would throw him. So all these spots and bumps that he took, Shawn called it in the match that Shawn would take all these bumps. So they kind of like flipped the role and this and that. And he said like it was almost about maybe 10, 15 minutes into the match before he was really like, all right, I'm just going to lift my hands back and I'm just going to let Shawn run with this thing. And he said at that point he was thinking like, man, I wish I was younger and Shawn and I could be having this match. Because just think how much more legit it would be. And even they just showed this on the dub on was it Raw or SmackDown that they showed?
It was on SmackDown. It was on SmackDown like too long ago. It was like a thing last week.
Yeah, they just showed this match and like watch it. I've seen it before, at least I want to say 2 or 3 times, and then seeing it again, on Friday was like Ric Flair. I mean, he looked legit. I mean, obviously he, like we said, he's 56 years old. I think he said he was, but it was, still watching like he moves better than some guys do now. So like it was still legit, and it was the story. Like he said, he beat Randy Orton. That was his last match before Mania because he was on a thing. You lose, you're done.
He beat in that row. He beat MVP. He beat Mr. Kennedy. He beat a lot of guys because Vince, even on Monday Night Raw, he'll put a guy to hold the whole road until WrestleMania, and that he picked Shawn Michaels. So that was like the whole story from that WrestleMania.
Yeah, and it was so legit. The story was there, this and that. And like I said, Shawn, say what you will about him. Some people don't like him, this and that. But when it comes to stuff like that, Shawn is always legit.
Yep, and we got that beautiful spot that like, I'm sorry, I love you. Switch and music, 1, 2, 3. But see, to me, I told you I was gonna put it together. If Jim Ross doesn't say that, it's like, look at the shot. Mm-hmm. It's like, see, he's all together. Camera, wrestler, commentator, all puts it together for you that are watching on the TV.
But yeah, that's why nothing seems exciting anymore because these commentators are like robots.
So to understand, like I will say the importance. Even hear that shot again. Look at this. Look at the moment. It's like Shawn Michaels is like super kicking Ric Flair for the last time. Even he says like, the camera catches it right away. I'm sorry, I love you, and all of that. And see, Ric Flair had like a great, like I would say, the best farewell of everybody. Mm-hmm. Even the next night, the Undertaker like posed when the show was over. The Undertaker comes out, they hug, they have a really like moment over there. Everybody's just like
people say that's one of the first moments that he broke kayfabe.
Yes.
The Undertaker.
Yes,
that's one of the first kind of like moments. Yeah.
But then Rick kind of like goes kind of like in like a path that like we've even mentioned this, and like what did Vince Steele said about that? Oh, dinero, my friend.
Yep.
Dinero. It's all about the green stuff. So Ric Flair has Stone Cold just went very briefly. What did you think about your run?
I do like how he said TNA because they went. Sometimes you hear when they talk about these in documentaries, they'll be like, they went out in the world and found themselves, or like, in the other promotions, or whatever they say. Stone Cold was maybe because he was sipping a couple IPAs. I don't know. He came right out and said TNA, and I was like, that's right. So that was legit. And like he said, he needed the money. I mean, he said he had fun and this and that. Some of the guys down there, he said, were super legit. But then it was like, it was Eric Bischoff and, all these other guys that were kind of running the show again. And it was like, it was the same old shit. And he hated it, but he needed the money.
I will tell you, personally, I was able to watch all of this. I do not hate this. Maybe people hate it because the fact, like he said, is my life, I'm retired. And right away, he needed the money. But like, I enjoyed it. He has that great promo that I sent you with Jay Lethal.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, he probably feels bad that he had, like you said, he feels bad he had to break that retirement. And like you said, he apologized to WWE up and down. He apologized to Shawn Michaels and this and that. He felt bad, but it's like, I need money. If WWE, unless they're going to pay my bills, I got to do what I got to do. And it would have been legit if it was still like Jeff Jarrett and, Jim Cornette and all those original guys. I think Dutch Mantell was even helping for a little bit in the beginning of TNA. All those guys, it probably would have been legit. But then you get the Vince Russos and Eric Bischoffs and all them, and it's like, forget it. You
Well,
know
the
what I
one
mean?
thing is like
It's over.
they kind of like, yeah, you said it, when they were TNA was really good because they were building the stars of their own. You know, Samoa Joe, like AJ Styles,
Yep,
and
Christopher Daniels. Yep.
Caesarea and Christopher Daniels, all of these guys, and then kind of they mix it in with one or two WWE guys. Kurt Angle, they will say Booker T at that time. You know, maybe free agents, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, whatever. But like they made it the same exact mistake as the NWO. They created a whole staple and they put everybody there. So that's what like it went down, and of course you got to pay Hogan extremely amounts of money, and that's what did it. And
Mm-hmm.
also probably Flair didn't. He wasn't cheap at all. So like that actually went downhill and everything. But that was really brief. But like I said, for me, I enjoyed. Like he had a lot of great moments, even with Nigel McGuinness, with AJ Styles. They reformed the Four Horsemen over there, and you know they gave guys like a run on that. So I don't mind it. I will say, you know, if I will ever see him, I will be like, I enjoyed it. You did great because like he did the same spots. He was the same Ric Flair for me. But John Paul, he mentions the three guys that like were the biggest draws in his eyes, or like his Mount Rushmore. So
Mm-hmm.
who were those guys?
Yeah, well, he said himself. I don't know if he actually said himself, but
Well,
like I think he includes himself. But I think he said because he did say four. It was four guys, correct?
he does say kind of me, but like then he mentions three. He
Yeah,
says Hulk Hogan.
yeah.
He
Hulk
says Hulk
Hogan,
Hogan. Yeah, because he
Stone.
says like that pretty much he put it on the map. And then
Yes,
Stone Cold
Stone
as the
Cold.
biggest draw of all time.
Yep,
And
and
then he
then
says
the
character
Undertaker.
and everything Undertaker. And
Yeah,
I
and
agree with that. I agree with
I,
that.
I felt like he said he might have mentioned Dusty up there too, but I know he also said like the Shawn Michaels and Triple H's for just like every not it's like everything. What impact have you had on the business? You know, what impact have you had on the fans? Longevity of the business. You know, like you said, Hogan put it on the map. Yeah, wrestling was cool. A lot of people were really into it. Hogan hit the scene. Wrestling was for people from the ages of 100 to the ages of 4 years old. If you could comprehend what you were seeing on TV, you were in love with wrestling back then. With Hogan, Warrior, all those guys, but it all started with Hogan. And then we all kind of matured. We wanted to see something extreme, something legit. We see Stone Cold, the middle fingers, drinking beer, this and that. You know, and that was all spearheaded with him. But The Undertaker was there through all of it. And he's still there now. So Undertaker, sometimes his T-shirts and his merch are bullshit, but anytime there's something new with the Undertaker's face on it, a stamp on it, whatever, it sells. It makes money. Anytime he's at a show, he's making appearances somewhere, people are gonna go. It's gonna sell. So the
What
Undertaker,
were we talking about last week? Boneyard match. Who was
yep,
in it? The Undertaker.
exactly. So the under, you know, I mean, I don't know if you can, if they have records, but I'm sure if you add up all the money in sales, I know Hogan sold a lot. But if you just go from the money that they made, I mean, Undertaker, he might not beat Hogan, but he's got to be. I would put him as number two.
Very close for me. But the one they always say that the number one is like the biggest draw of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin. They say that, and I think that till this day, you see that when everything that mentions Stone Cold Steve Austin, even if you're not a fan, you just want to turn on and see. Like I want to see Stone
Well,
Cold doing the
I
Stunner Wrestle.
remember in my elementary school, and then also in my middle school, they had the poster of Stone Cold, and then the other I forget which had which, but the one had a poster of Stone Cold and The Rock in the cafeteria with the milk mustaches. Remember, like they got. Well, I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
if
got
they had
milk.
that, but like
Got
they
milk.
got milk. They had that, and it's like I see that, and I'm like, oh, that's Stone Cold. That's The Rock. But I wasn't like really into wrestling back then when I was that young, so it was like, you know, but I even knew who they were because
Yeah.
that's just how
That's when
popular
you
they were.
transcend, and yeah, we will have more videos on that. That is the truth. Like I agree with you. And well, then he pretty much like we cover everything, but then he kind of like mentions how like he transcend to pop culture, and then he kind of like said that how like the woo came about, how like his
Mhm.
character and everything, and then he mentions that he took it from Jerry Lee Lewis with like the Great Balls of
Great
Fire and
Balls of
everything.
Fire. Yep.
Yep, not the pay per view, not that bad
Yeah.
pay per view, but he mentions this song, and he says that that's why he got woo, and then his character is like me. He's like I always went and bought things on the fly, and that's why I tried to always dress as best as I could. He mentions I lost like 4 Rolex with the
Hmm.
Undertaker, so one guy, you wonder what kind of things they were, on the party and everything. But it's just so happy. It's just so like nice to see that like he's still with us. He's in good shape. He says, "Hey, right now my bills are paid. I don't own anything to anybody. I'm not
Yep.
bankrupt." Says I found Wendy, his wife. He's happy, and like even Ben said that like he gave his check to go to Crown Jewel or one of the Saudi events, and he gave it in advance. And he says Ben's will never do that,
Yep.
but like he
And
did that
there's
time for him.
yeah, and two legit moments that like kind of I mean everything that we talked about stood out, but there was two other little legit moments that stood out. Is when he was talking about his influence on like sports teams, or it's MLB, hockey, basketball, football, whatever. He's like, he talks to them, gives speeches and this and that, and he's like, he's really in the rap scene and stuff where like he's popular with them. And he said LeBron James. He was like, he told him that Ric Flair, he's the one who coined the term. Ric Flair was the inventor of swag and all this stuff. And he was like, it was because I saw you on TV and how you were rich and driven and all this stuff. And you had the Rolex watches. He's like, and I saw that, and he's like, that kept me off the streets because I knew if I was, in the streets living a life of crime, I wouldn't have the Rolex watch. I wouldn't have all the chicks. I wouldn't have all
He's
this stuff. So
influencing. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, you kept me on the straight and narrow, you could say. So that was like legit to hear that he inspired, just so many people who didn't even go into wrestling, just, into sports in general, or just, entertainment in general, whether it's, rappers, musicians, whatever. And then also when he was talking about all this stuff, with his like self-doubt and all this stuff, and he was like, even now, I think he said like almost 71 years old, he's like, people still want to see me and they still care about me. And he started to get emotional. And then Stone Cold was like, he's just looking at him like he's staring down The Undertaker, like SummerSlam 98. And he's just like, you better stop crying or I'm going to start crying too. And it was like so legit. It was such a legit moment because it's like,
It
you
was a
see these
pure
guys.
moment, John
Yeah.
Paul. Pure.
Yeah. You see these guys and you're like, oh, they're tough. They're badasses, They don't cry. They don't, whatever. Like, yeah, Ric Flair cries in the ring, like, oh, don't hit me. And then he low blows the, the baby face. But it's like, no, you like it is real. These emotions these people feel, they're real. They're human beings. We see them. We might think they're like superstars, like, oh, what they do is larger than life. But it's like, we all struggle. We all have these feelings and emotions. And it's legit when somebody can feel good and appreciate it. Like, you think, how would Ric Flair never not feel good and appreciate it? Well, it
Oh
is
yeah.
possible. And you see that, and it's legit that, like we said, he's healthy and all this stuff, and that he, feels good, feels wanted, feels loved by, all the fans and his peers.
Exactly. So that's for me. That was the whole interview. I will say. Of course, they did talk about Charlotte. Hey, like so many people can hate her. So many people can love her. I will say at least, hey, the match with Rhea Ripley was really good,
Oh,
and the girl itself. I know that like more people think, a lot of people, and I wouldn't call myself, I think, that believe she's entitled. I will always say, hey, they put way too many championships
yeah.
in
Well,
her
yeah. This
than
is
what she should have.
this
That for
yeah.
me is
No,
different.
I agree with you 100%, and this is what I'm going to say in the whole thing. I knew they were going to try to get Charlotte over a little bit. They had that for like maybe 5-10 minutes. They were just kind of putting Charlotte on a pedestal, like, oh, she's legit. Even if she wasn't a Flair, she would still be just as legit. Yeah, she would, but she wouldn't have as many title reigns. And like you said, that's not. I don't think Charlotte Flair walks into the office and goes, "Give me the Raw Women's Championship." Woo! No, they're like, "Hey, we don't know what to do. We'll give it to Charlotte because she's a Flair and she's legit and we love her." What's Charlotte gonna
Exactly.
say? What's Charlotte gonna say? No, I don't want the belt. Give it to somebody else. Who would say that? You know what I mean? I
Exactly.
don't. I don't care if I've had the belt 100 times. If they say, Jean Paul, do you want to be the champion? Yeah. Now, if I wants to build somebody, I'll say, give me the belt, and then let's build a program with this guy, and I'll drop it to him.
Which she
But I,
does. She
but I,
lost the title also.
yeah,
She's
but she's
I don't know.
lost it one more time than she's won it. So she's won it 10 times. Well, I guess now she's even since she currently has the NXT title, but she has 11 title reigns and 11 losses.
Yeah. So
So
and that's the thing for me. That's at
yeah,
least how I see her. Do I think that she will be as over? She wouldn't be a Flair. And that one, I will be a little bit more careful because if you take away the Flair, half of the moveset, half of the character, half of the gimmick is gone.
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
to me, she's still a legit wrestler. If you change her finisher from the figure four, figure eight into a different move, all her moveset could still be the same. Yeah, she can't do the over the turnbuckle bump, But that's pretty much it. That the robe and going woo. But I mean,
The chops, the
I mean,
chops.
yeah, but everyone does chops. A
Yeah,
lot
but
of people.
like, you will say, yeah, it's true. For me, I will love that she will do the kick that she does, the big boot. That will be
Yeah,
more believable than natural selection, for example, if you ask
yeah,
me.
but I mean, if you're just going off wrestling talent, Charlotte to me is legit.
Oh
Just
yeah,
off the pure wrestling talent, legit. That match with Rhea Ripley, you can't watch that and be like, oh, Charlotte's not good in the ring. There's no way.
yeah, like that's what I mean, and then that's the thing. And see, that's this sums it up. I think we cover everything. We encourage you guys to go and watch that interview. It's really great. We don't know who's going to be next, but I think Stone Cold, like this whole season of this Broken Sculptures, has been very, very good. You know, for
Yeah.
me, I learned a lot with the Undertaker. That was great. I will say Bret Hart was awesome.
Mm.
Kane was awesome.
And
Big Show
now,
was funny,
yeah,
and this
yeah,
one
Big Show's
was.
was good. Yeah, Goldberg's definitely the weakest one by far. But now this, I would say I would be surprised if they have a new one soon. Now this, when they were talking about it, this was in past tense. WrestleMania had not happened yet, so you could
Yes,
tell they filmed this at least, I would say at least probably 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. So with that being said, I don't know, maybe they filmed another one, but I feel like they filmed this right before all the traveling and all the stuff got crazy. Because I don't remember where Stone Cold has where he does these. If they're in Los Angeles or where it is.
I think
But
it's Los
unless the
Angeles.
but unless a wrestler like lives close or maybe, whatever, they're probably not going to be on the show for a while. So I could see this one being the last one for a while, but if it is, what a one to go out on.
Exactly.
Till
It's Ric
things come
Flair.
back to
He's
normal,
the
and then we
greatest
can
of all
see
time.
season 2 of the
We can
Broken
really
Skull
think
match.
about him as the greatest of all time because you know what? Like he's a part of our lives. And like the one
But
thing
they
is like
did, but didn't wasn't there a picture of him with RVD
yeah,
at the
but
Broken
I think
Skull?
I think that might be the one that I think Stone Cold does the Broken Skull sessions is
Oh,
his
oh,
thing.
oh, oh, he has
It's
his
not
no,
like
he
a
has the
WWE
it's
thing.
well, he calls it's the Stone Cold podcast, I
Oh,
think.
but that
Yeah,
might have
yeah.
been the one. That might have been
Okay,
he
okay,
still does
okay.
his
Because I
podcast.
was gonna say they might have filmed a bunch of them, and they're kind of just picking and choosing which ones they want to
Or
release.
maybe that could be the
Yeah.
case. That will be also the case. But this sums it up for us,
Oh, but
guys. Yeah,
I was gonna say, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, with RVD, like he was like his WWE run wasn't like that long, so it could have been for his podcast. Like you said, that's not affiliated with WWE. Because what he talk about with RVD? So tell me about Impact. Tell me about TNA. Tell me about
yeah. Well,
ECW.
that's what I mean. Like it
Like
will have to
he can't
be.
talk a lot about WWE. So you know,
It does
it's
make sense if he will
probably
just be like
yeah.
that. So, guys, thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget about all the content that we mentioned. And don't forget to check us out on the social
Vince
media world.
Steel Jurassic Juggernaut. Check that out.
Jurassic Juggernaut and all the videos that we have for all of you guys. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for checking us out. Don't forget Happy Easter to every single one of you. Jean Paul, you and me have one last thing to say. And you gotta charge it for that. You gotta charge it. You gotta charge it. Get better. Feel better, family. Don't forget to wash your hands. And that is.